Does life exist? Does anything exist if you are not there to be aware of it? The short answer is yes and no. So it all depends on your definition of self and therefore your definition of consciousness. So what this question is pointing to is the idea that the only thing that we can know is that we exist. So the only thing that I can know for sure is that I exist. And therefore, who is to say that if I died and I was just this body, then there was nothing that anything else would exist? Who's to say that there's anything outside of my consciousness? So there's no way of saying that. So on that level, no. Nothing would exist unless you existed, because there would be no awareness of it. On a deeper level, when you change your definition of self and realize what consciousness or what self is, the answer is that yes, things would exist because you would still be there to be aware of things, because you are inherently consciousness. You are not just a human being, you are consciousness expressing itself as a human being. So we simply identify consciousness as our human experience of what consciousness is because of our bias. So we're not necessarily aware, or we can't fathom that consciousness could exist in a form other than a human brain, being transmitted through the human brain. So we equivalent consciousness with the level of cognizance that we know. And yet we can philosophize and we ask ourselves this question that I've been playing with, that that perhaps there's nothing outside of consciousness, right? Because consciousness seems fundamental to existence, because if there was nothing to be aware of anything, then it would just be nothing, right? There would be no. So here's where the answer is simply that everything is actually made out of consciousness. Okay, so yes, life would still exist if you weren't there to see it, because you would still be there to experience it, not from an outside perspective of a separate identity, but as that thing itself. Because everything is actually made out of the same consciousness that you identify as yourself, but what is being used to be conscious through you is the same thing that is being used to manifest as all things. And so it is all on a greater level outside of the human ego. It is all the same self. It's all the same thing. And it is all inherently consciousness, even though we can't fathom usually that other things can be conscious. We can understand that, okay, animals can be conscious. We can start to understand also, if we're open to it, we do our research, that trees are conscious, plants are conscious, right? The mycelial, the fungi underneath the earth is conscious. It keeps going deeper and deeper, deeper into infinity. Everything is made of consciousness itself. And this is where we start to really get into philosophy and into inner exploration. We realize there's no world outside of us objectively. Everything is within us, right? Like we said in the beginning. All that we can know for sure is that I exist or that you exist, right? And everything is actually within our consciousness. There is no universe separate. As Neil deGrasse Tyson said, what we define to be reality is really just electrical signals in the brain. But the brain is just a radio attuning to consciousness. It is not or consciousness is manifested. It's just a channel for consciousness. Like the trees are channels for consciousness, which are just channels for the earth's consciousness, as are we, in conglomeration with the sun, which is pure consciousness itself, or pure light. It is all synonymous, and everything is intrinsically a big web of one singular consciousness ecosystem. So no, nothing would exist if you weren't there to exist it, to experience it, to witness it. It wouldn't exist because you are everything, because you are consciousness itself. And everything comes from the consciousness. There is actual research to support this in growing fields of quantum physics and of different consciousness studies, and this has long been kind of pushed away as nonsense and non-understandable to our limited sense of self. But this is what Eastern or meditators or spiritual traditions throughout history have always spoken of on different level and seen it in different ways, going back to the first spirituality of animism, saying that everything has a personality, everything is animated with the life force. So everything exists by its own fact that it is existence, it is consciousness manifest as that specific archetypal form of consciousness. So everything exists by the fundamental equation or nature of it being conscious of itself. That is why it exists, because it is conscious of itself. And so it goes much deeper than that, and there's infinite layers to consciousness, obviously. But consciousness is synonymous with God, you can think of it. And that's just a little teaser, a little beginner idea to play with, some ideas to play with. And to go in deeper, it goes much, much deeper beyond what I can fit into a short little video that I wanted to entertain with this little philosophical experiment of realizing the nature of things. So, yeah, if you like this, if this made you think, if this made you hungry for more understanding, let me know. If you'd like me to go deeper onto this, there's endless layers to unfold here. It is overly simplified in many ways because it can't be spoken of. It is what comes before language, and we have very limited language to understand or speak about this or to measure this or to prove it. But essentially, you cannot prove anything other than your own existence. And this is where we start to get into awakening in the dream that there is anything outside. One little thing to leave us with. In a dream, you think that you are the character, the POV character, and you think that everything outside of you is real and is outside, and that you are a victim to it. But when you become lucid, or when you wake up, then you realize that it's always been all these seeming things outside of you have always, you thought they were real, you thought it was a real house and real this, it was actually made out of your own consciousness. No matter how real it felt, it was all a dream. So that is just one fractal layer, one glimpse into the nature of this reality. And awakening, as has been spoken of in Buddhism and in Hinduism and in different spiritual traditions in different ways, non-dually speaking, awakening to God realization or self-realization or expanded or cosmic consciousness or the Godhead or whatever you want to call all these words for just realizing your true nature, what is always already happening, is that you are just, if you like the word God, you can think of it as you are just a God. You are just God walking in one big God. So you are just, the thing that you're walking in, this whole universe is actually, it's all within you. This is all within your own consciousness. This would not exist here if I did not exist here. If I was there, something else would exist. So really going into this deep realization, you eventually realize that you are the source of all of existence, and you are the dreamer. You are not just the one being dreamed, You are everything being dreamed. And this is when you become lucid and start to awaken to new profound levels of realizing the creator that you are. But you are co-creating with all these other aspects of yourself. You are not the sole God. You are not higher than anything else. You are one. You are equal to everything else. And we are all just one being, dreaming that we are separate and that there is anything outside of us. In order to play, in order to dream, in order to realize in our infinite imagination that we are far grander, infinitely grander than we ever thought. And it all comes to being in relationship, in love, in loving relationship, befriending existence. God is not something high up there, not some authoritarian judger. It is everything. It is nature itself. And it is in relationship with you, to you. We are not dependent. We are not independent. We are interdependent with everything. And we are essentially made of consciousness. And there is infinite layers of consciousness to uncover here, to go deeper into, to awaken into, to open to. They're always here. All of existence lies in our subconscious, in our unconscious. And there is always some level of communication and interaction happening in all these different levels with different chemicals and messages and ways of attuning to nature and to life. But it all comes back to the silence of self-inquiry, the silence of meditation, in order to experience who you really are other than just who you think you are, and experience the universe for what it is, which, according to this philosophy that I've shared, is all you, is all pure consciousness, and is all that is.